The great thing about rent to rent is it's low money down. In other words, your initial investment is way lower than it would be if you're purchasing a property, right? So what we want to do is we want to minimize the cost at every level. And one of the most common costs, and it's super annoying, is having to pay a damage deposit to the letting agent or to the landlord, which could be 5 weeks rent. So if your rent's £2,000, you could be paying over £2,000, £2,500 in deposit, which massively increases your startup costs, and we want to keep them down. So in this video, I'm going to share with you how I rarely, I won't say never, but rarely ever pay a deposit, and how I help my mentees never pay deposits too. Check it out. I'm Simon, rent-to-rent specialist, and I created this channel because I wanted to help people like you. When I was brand new to rent-to-rent, yeah, people did the odd video and they kind of skirted around the important issues and then sold their free courses and all that stuff. And I was like, you know what? I just want to give loads of information out for free. We've got over 500 videos, which you always tell me are more valuable than most of the courses you go on. So here is my gift to you, okay? And if it sounds good, subscribe, comment, make sure you support, follow me on Instagram at Simon Smith Online. So deposits, let's talk about it. Well, the first thing we need to talk about is why, or what is a deposit and why do they exist? Well, if you can imagine you're renting your property out to a tenant and it's in beautiful condition, what happens is at the end of the agreement, when there's damage, the scuffed walls, the oven's not been cleaned, there's damage to a window seal, you clearly want to have a deposit so you can make those repairs. And the way it generally works in the UK is that you would pay a 5-week deposit or up to a 5-week deposit on a standard residential AST. The letting agent or landlord by law has to store that in a safety deposit scheme. And then at the end, you have this intermediary who will basically mediate between whether there is enough evidence of damage and whether there is not. So how does this work in rent to rent? Well, if you're working with a letting agent, 99 times out of 100, you are going to need to pay a deposit. Why? Because that is what the agent is used to. The agent wants to protect themselves, okay? And there's no way to really get out of it, generally. I started this video and I was saying, I always have to pay a deposit for agents, but that's not true. I have done deals where I've not paid a deposit to an agent, but it's usually been when I've got a great relationship with them and the property's been a little bit tired, so I've done an initial investment. So if you're with a letting agent, expect to pay the deposit, but don't include it in your sort of initial investment figures because it is very likely you will get that money back as long as you take good care of the property. So just think of it as you're storing the money. You're not losing it forever. Now, direct to vendor, I never pay a deposit. In fact, yep, I can confirm I have never, ever paid a deposit. And I've done over 70 rent to rent deals. Probably over 40 of them have been direct to the landlord. I know what you're thinking. How? How do you get out of paying the deposit? Well, I'm going to show you something right now. Okay, you got to get certain. You've got to get confident. And I call it the assumed close. So what happens is if they mention a deposit and you sort of, oh, okay, or you hesitate or you're a bit weak, they will overpower you. All right. So what you need to do is strongly say whenever anybody mentions a deposit, we don't pay deposits. Here's a reason why. Because we're investing significantly in the property. Our clients require a high standard, so it is within our interest to take great care of your property. And then you shut up. And I promise you, if you do that, 80% of the time, they will just be like, okay, all right. Particularly if you lean on how much you are investing in the property, okay? How much you are investing in the property is absolutely key. Now, on some occasions, you're going to get a common objection that we get. A load of people on the Rent to 100K program have been mentioning this lately. And that is, but you're a new business. Why should we trust you? I'm taking a big risk on choosing you. So how do you overcome that? Well, there are times where you have to pay a deposit. But what I would do if I was you is if it's a 5-year agreement, say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord, I get it. How about we pay a deposit, but maybe 4 weeks? You come and have a look in the property in 6 months or in 12 months. And if you're happy, you give us that money back so we can invest it in the property and on our business. So I've done that quite a lot too. Another thing that can be useful is in the event where you do have to pay a deposit, never give up something in negotiation without asking something in return. So what I mean by that is if they're adamant they want a deposit, say, look, okay, we're happy to pay a deposit, but can we do 3 weeks rent? Or we're happy to pay a deposit, but could I get an extra 5 days to prepare the property? So use it as a point of negotiation. And my last tip, and this is a big one, is it's never worth losing a deal over. Remember, this money is stored. You're going to get it back. If you have a professional landlord that's been doing lettings for 20 years and has historically always taken a deposit, you're probably going to have to pay a deposit. If, however, you've got a sophisticated landlord who really understands it, you've got an accidental landlord, or you've got a motivated landlord, these are the type of landlords that I recommend focusing on. I talk about it in the book. Then if you do the assumed, we don't do deposit, most of the time it's going to work. I hope you found this video useful. If you have, please do comment below and I'll see you in the next video.